Okay, fabulous. All right. Greetings, friends and comrades. Daniel Tutt is back with Emancipations podcast for an interview, a conversation with a thinker that has deeply influenced my own work, Mladen Dolar. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good morning to Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure and an honor.
Indeed, yes. So let me just say a couple of things about Mladen Dolar's work in the event that you are unfamiliar. So we have here a thinker of literally the highest caliber. He's a founder of what is known as the Slovene school of Lacanian psychoanalytic thought. Most notably, Slavoj Žižek is one of the main members of what's called the Troika, Alenka Zupančič, Mladen Dolar, and Slavoj Žižek. And in fact, I actually want to begin our conversation to inviting you, Mladen, to say a few things regarding the origins of the Troika, of the Slovene school. I think it's much more than just three names or three thinkers. But Mladen has written about a number of topics in the left, in philosophy. He's written a wonderful untranslated work on Hegel, written a number of works on Lacanian thought, most notably an essay on Freud's concept of the political. You are, in some sense, a very masterful essayist, I must say. One of my favorite essays of yours is on smoking and
Ah,
smoking as an act of
mhm.
communist. Uh, well, that's something maybe we can talk about. Um, and a wonderful work also on the concept of the voice. So Mladen actually, similar to my own psychoanalyst, studied with Lacan as a young student in Paris, um, which must have been quite an experience. And, one of the things that we do here on this show of mine, this podcast, is we try to demystify the Lacanian field from its intimidating corpus of its conceptual apparatus, right? Because I think that there is a rumor about Lacanian thought that it is, full of jargon and nonsense and intellectual puffery, which, of course, I try to argue on the contrary. No, no, no. Let's be more patient with Lacan. There's actually something very worthwhile with Lacan, despite all of the noise and rumor surrounding him. And of course, so after we hear from you a little bit about your origins as a thinker, we do want to talk about this book here called Rumors. And I really want to thank the publisher here for helping facilitate this conversation, Polity Press. So we're going to talk about rumors. But first, Mladen, could you, tell us a little bit about your background, what got you interested in philosophy and Lacanian thought, and perhaps a little bit about this notion of the Slovene school?
Well, I don't know where to start really. It's a long story. I suppose we could spend a whole hour on this development of the Ljubljana school and its various facets. And I would just say that I had the incredible fortune of being young at a certain point. At a certain point, which is epitomized by somehow the shorthand is May 68. But it's not just May 68. There was a number of developments at that time. There was a political opening. There were anti-Vietnam protests. There was the assassination of Che Guevara. There was assassination of Martin Luther King, the civil rights movement. There was a cultural opening. There was Woodstock. There was the infatuation with the rock music. There was sexual revolution. There was situationism and then the whole bunch of artistic avant-garde movements. And intellectually, there was on the one hand the Frankfurt School, which was at its height at the time. This is the end of 60s, the beginning of 70s. And at the same time, particularly what happened in France, the structuralism and then post-structuralism, which we saw as a sort of counterpart to May 68 and to this political and cultural opening. And in the 70s, a bunch of young students in Ljubljana, and this was a socialist country, this was backwaters, but nevertheless, there was an opening of the socialist country at the time. So we could travel abroad, we could acquire foreign literature. So there was a bunch of young students who started discussing this, taking it very seriously, trying to make sense of it, because it was kind of difficult at the time to see why structuralism would be a philosophical movement. There was Lévi-Strauss as an anthropologist, there was Lacan as a psychoanalyst, there was Althusser as a Marxist, there was Barthes as a literary scholar, there were linguists. So it was kind of difficult to figure out why that would present a current and how this all hangs together. And Foucault as the historian, etc. So we tried to figure this out during the 70s, and in a number of discussions, we met more or less every week, 5 or 6 people, and by the end of 70s, we all turned Lacanians. We somehow thought that Lacan is the one whose thought goes the furthest in this structuralist revolution. At the same time, we kept fidelity to what we learned from the Frankfurt School. Namely, Yugoslavia was a special kind of socialist country. It was an anti-Stalinist socialist country. There was a split between Tito and Stalin after the Second World War, which then catered for a very, very different development of Yugoslav socialism. And so the Frankfurt School variety of Marxism was basically what we were taught as students in philosophy. So we try to keep fidelity to Marx, not only to the kind of Marx that Frankfurt School was promoting, but actually going back to a new reading of Marx, as it were. And on the other hand, we try to keep fidelity to the Hegelian legacy, which was at odds with the structuralist legacy at the time, because the structuralism didn't want to. Actually, there was a rupture between the whole Hegelian thing and the structuralist revolution. So all these things were in the air in the 70s. And we tried to, well, keep fidelity to all these different strands. And this is how eventually, by the end of 70s and the early 80s, this, what is now called the Ljubljana School, emerged. And I believe that this was happening in a number of places in the world. I mean, this intellectual high, this opening, this time where everything seemed to be possible. I mean, as so very much opposed to our own historical moment now, where it seems it's a moment of closure and less things seem to be possible. So yes, trying to keep fidelity to that opening and to that intellectual revolution that happened at the time.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's something that has been very, I think, influential for my generation and for politics in the American Anglosphere in particular, this incorporation of a Lacanian orientation. And I wanted to invite you to say something about why Lacan is a seminal thinker for politics, perhaps, in particular. I mean, we could say for Marxism, but perhaps it becomes a mystery for some students, for some people, why the centrality of Lacan, because there is this Frankfurt School tradition, and there is this tradition of Freudian Marxism, which, of course, Lacan rejects Freudian Marxism in the Deleuze and Guattari or Wilhelm Reich orientation, and he sketches a very novel and singular track or vision beyond Freudian Marxism, as I read it. So, is part of that a break also from the Frankfurt School itself and their attempted fusion of Freud with Marx? Because when you say why Lacan, you have to say why Freud, and why Freud and Marx. So, could you say a few things regarding that, perhaps in a general sense, so we get our bearings straight? Because I only say that before we talk about your new book, because Lacan is, I think, at the a very central interlocutor in your book. So could you say some general
Okay.
things about importance?
Well, again, you ask a very large question. We could spend another hour just trying to disentangle how these different things hang together, how they can be thought together. First, I would say that Lacan was very important for us. I mean, Lacan was. We realized. I said that we realized by the end of 70s, after engaging very closely with the French structuralism, that Lacan's story is the one that goes the furthest. And this has to do, well, I think the first notion that one can mention is the notion of the subject, because the structuralism was generally thought as a movement of thought which did away with the subject. And the famous slogan at the time was Foucault's rather unfortunate slogan of the death of man. So this is how it was thought about. That somehow subject is still a remainder of a metaphysical tradition, and structuralism has moved beyond to structures, to some sort of uh, misconceived, objective, or impersonal structures that define our bearings. And Lacan was the one who insisted all throughout his career on the notion of the subject as being absolutely central, but not the autonomous, transparent subject of self-consciousness, such as it was generally thought about in the tradition, but he speaks about the subject of the unconscious, which is a paradox. I mean, the subject properly emerges with the unconscious. The unconscious is that alien kernel in us. It's not. It's something that seems to counteract the autonomy of the autonomous subject. It's something that escapes this autonomy. But there is a moment of truth precisely in that alien kernel. So this is the wager of Lacan. It's only when we start to address this alien kernel within ourselves. The unconscious is something that we produce ourselves, but that we produce as an enigma. We are an enigma to ourselves. This is what makes us subjects, not the capacity to be the originator of one's own thoughts and actions. So being faithful to the moment which is alien, but which presents the moment of truth. And this is another outdated, as it were, at the time, the notion of truth. I mean, it seemed that post-structuralism stood for this: anything goes, everything is a narrative. There's no truth has no special value, etc., etc. So Lacan was precisely the one who stuck with the notion of the truth and the notion of subject, and
Mm,
this is the starting point of psychoanalysis. This is
mm,
where sort of another kind of transformative thinking has to get hold of this precisely the alienation, the alien kernel in us, which
mm.
presents the moment of truth. And you can see that there is a huge division with the Frankfurt School, where alienation seemed to be. I mean, it is in no Frankfurt School. Alienation is precisely something that we have to be rid of. It's we have to overcome alienation in order to rejoin our autonomy, as it were.
Mm.
In Lacan, alienation is constitutive. It's a constitutive moment of subjectivity. We have to espouse our own alienation, as it were, which is a paradoxical move.
Mm.
And well, from there, it, I don't think we can go into this at more length, but
Sure.
I mean, how this hangs together with the political impact. I would just say that in response to the May 68 moment, and Lacan was deeply involved in the May 68 moment. As a response to this, Lacan in 69, in Seminar 17, he presented his own theory of the four discourses,
Mm.
which was his own political, the, the most systematic political statement that he ever made. I mean, in response to the very hot political moment at the time, where he tried to think about discourse as a social tie, what establishes a social bond, and present four basic types of discourses that precisely in the shifts, in the insight into the shifts of their logic, one can get hold of the socially transformative discourse. And the one thing that we deeply appreciated in Lacan is that he was the one in the structuralist tradition who continued the Hegelian legacy. And this was based on his involvement with Kojève, who was his teacher, professor, master in the 30s. So he never gave up on the Hegelian legacy, as opposed to the others. Deleuze's famous oublier Hegel. We have to forget Hegel, that this horrible thing ever happened. And Lacan tried to work with the Hegelian legacy, and the discourse of the master, which is the basic type of discourse, actually follows from his reading, which is based on Kojève's reading of the master-slave dialectic in Hegel. So this is how we have I don't think that Kojève's Hegel is very good Hegel. We try to present a different kind of reading of Hegel, but nevertheless, there was this connection to the Hegelian legacy, which we thought was extremely important.
Thank you very much. And if I could, final point on that, then we will talk about the new book. What seminars did you attend of Lacan, out of curiosity?
Oh, no, by the end of 70s, as I told you, we all turned Lacanians, and by some incredible stroke of luck, I got in 1979, in 1980, I got a scholarship of French government to go study in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And so I attended Lacan's last seminar.
Wow.
And this is the very last, his last appearance in Paris. I mean, well, there's a story connected to this, because the moment I came to Paris, I believe that there was this big other in Paris, which was called École Freudienne de Paris, Lacan's organization. And the moment I arrived in Paris, it was the moment of La Dissolution, the moment when Lacan disbanded his own school at the height of its glory. So at the height of its success, what it seemed to be its great success, he decided to disband the school. So the moment I came to Paris, there was the moment of there's no more Big Other. I mean, the Big Other has dissolved itself. There was the dissolution of the Big Other. So my first psychoanalytic lesson is, look, Big Other doesn't exist anymore. But nevertheless, the last seminar was on La Dissolution. He gave several lessons, sessions on La Dissolution, because a dissolution is not an act which one can accomplish with a certain proclamation. It actually demands le travail de la dissolution, the work of dissolution, dissolving of what he called the glue. I mean, he had this pun in French. L'école means the school, and la colle means the glue. So the school, the organization started to be the glue, which one has to undo in order to do proper psychoanalysis.
Mm-hmm.
So I only somehow, very fortunately, took the last seminar of Lacan and spent this year 1980 in Paris. And at this time, I was just at the whole thing, the structural thing was in full swing. So I listened to Lévi-Strauss. I followed the course of Derrida. I followed the course of Foucault at Collège de France. I followed Deleuze. So everybody was still there in full swing. It seemed to be incredible. Yes, and a year later, Lacan died. Roland Barthes died during the time I was in Paris. A few years later, Foucault died. So another story began in the 80s, a different kind of story. So I caught like the last possible moment of this grand structuralist story.
Well, Alain Badiou has a phrase about Lacan that I really like, which is basically, to paraphrase, any contemporary philosopher will not truly become a philosopher until they have worked with and struggled with the entirety of Lacan's anti-philosophy. Okay, so what the hell is
he also has the phrase Lacan our Hegel.
Yes. So, okay, here's my thought, which is I want to now pivot to the new book, Rumors, and to maybe invite the beginning point with Socrates, since I just introduced philosophy. So you begin your tale, in some sense, your story here, with the origins of philosophy, right, as an attempt to sort of address sophism and address logos, or the kind of elements that pollute or degrade reason, logos, etc. And you show that Socrates becomes a figure who is sort of well, he's a hero, but he also is sort of sacrificed by the forces of the other side of logos, of rumors, of gossip, of intrigue. And maybe we could start there, yeah, with this notion that for Socrates, he wants to stake down a commitment to what you call in Lacanian theory a big other, that will be rid of, or I don't want to use the word purify, but maybe that would be accurate, of this irrational side of logos. So philosophy sets itself the task of to do precisely that, which is to get to the heart of this incrustation on logos. Tell us a little bit about this operation of the origins of philosophy, and how ultimately rumors are at the origin of philosophy.
Well, yes, I start the story with Socrates, and with the establishment of logos as a sort of, let's say, first figure of what Lacan calls the big other. The big other as a sort of guarantee of shared meaning, guarantee that our thoughts are based in argument, in epistemic endeavor, in knowledge, as opposed to, say, the regime of doxa. The regime of doxa, on the one hand, which is the regime of opinions and beliefs, and this everybody's entitled to have his or her own opinions, and opinions don't need to have epistemological grounding. It's enough that they are circulated and people believe that it is so. But Socrates sort of undid the opinions. This was his business, to undermine the opinions and show them and put them on the path of true knowledge, a knowledge that aims at truth, has proper epistemological foundations. On the one hand, the divide between doxa and episteme, and on the other hand, the divide between mythos and logos, because because there is no society without a big other. So, but the big other before that was based on a certain mythical narrative, and I don't deal with this. I mean, is myth rumor, or what kind of truth value it has? It's a different kind of problem. I start with the origin of philosophy, with the epistemic sort of foundation of logos, which as opposed to mythos, has to be sort of immanent. It is based on a sort of immanent rational explanation of the universe. And at the same time, it was the beginning of the written culture. I mean, the writing is a sort of something that establishes, that supports the Picard in some way, because writing has its value independently of the particular situation of speech situation. It has an independent value. It can be checked later at other places by other people. So there is this establishment of the big other and in the beginning of philosophy. But then if you look at the fate of Socrates, I mean, he finished before the Athenian tribunal, 399 BCE, and what undid him, the reason that he was in the end condemned and sentenced, is not just the accusations that were immediately there in this trial, but as he says himself in his apology, there have been rumors circulating against him that framed him for years and years. And he says, I could beat the visible opponents, the ones who are here, but I can't beat the invisible opponents who have set the stage for this trial. And so what people believed was not his epistemological defense, where he could show very clearly and depend on his reasonable argument why he is innocent of the charges. What people believed was precisely the rumors that have set the stage, that have colored the very space in which he was trying to make his defense. And in the end, the rumors won. The rumors won. So you have this dramatic beginning of this story of the rumors, that on the one hand, logos, epistemology, reason, argument, and on the other hand, something. What is a rumor? I mean, rumor is even lower than opinion, because with opinions, people subscribe to their opinions. They're proud of their opinions. But with rumors, nobody subscribes to them. No? This is the zero definition, or the makeshift definition of rumor. I mean, I heard this rumor. I heard the rumor has it. And I love this phrase. The rumor has it. Now the rumor has this undefinable it, which is spreading around in a whirlwind, and even if nobody believes it, even if all people somehow think that this is a lie, but this is a sort of entertaining rumor, let me just spread it a bit. No? So even if nobody believes it, even if everybody is convinced that this is just based on thin air, it nevertheless works. It has effects. It produces effects. No? So this is how I set up this story. That on the one hand, we have the story of the big other, the story of logos, the story of knowledge, the story of reason, of argument. And on the other hand, you have this other side, this other big other, the shadowy big other. And the terms I use is the big other and the shadow wins. You know? But the big other and its double. And it's this strange double which has no consistency, which has no substantiality, which has the power that nevertheless can win. You know? Or the big other and its symptom. You know? It's a big symptom of the big other, that it cannot defeat this other big other which is not based on anything, but nevertheless circulates, and by circulate it can ruin people's lives and ruin the whole society.
Incredible.
So this is the beginning of the story.
Thank you so much. There are two little references I want to make as a side comment, and then we will return. One is to a wonderful philosophical essay, which I believe you've written about, by Clement Rosé, The Real and Its Double, which, frankly, when I read your book, I feel like you have tapped into the spirit of Rosé in some sense, because of the style is very similar, and which is a compliment, by the way. I think he's a master writer. And the other reference I would make would be to the Japanese Marxist philosopher Kojin Karatani in his book on Socrates and the origin of philosophy, Isonomia, where he argues that Socrates identifies a conception of equality that he preaches in the Agora, which effectively, why he is a gadfly to the sophists, is because it's a kind of non-representational form of radical egalitarianism at the origin of philosophy, and therefore it undoes all identities in some sense. It's like this kind of cutting. It cuts the it's also a Marxist point about the division of labor. So philosophy disrupts the division of labor. It disrupts the status quo. And in that sense, Socrates is victorious over the sophists, but he's not victorious over rumors. That is very interesting to me. So then where does this dark other side of the law, because Kafka is another modern thinker, and I would say that before the law, the wonderful parable, which almost presupposes the trial, speaks precisely about this, that embedded in the law is this dark, I mean, even you said Seminar 17, why did Lacan call it the other side of psychoanalysis? So could you speak about this, about the victory of this dark irrational element? Say a bit more about that, perhaps.
Well, yes, I like both your references to Clément Rosset, whom I deeply appreciate. I very much enjoy reading him, in spite of the fact that he sees Hegel and Lacan as his adversaries. He's definitely not a Hegelian. He's
Oh,
an
he is a
anti-Hegelian.
Nietzschean. He is a Nietzschean.
He's a Nietzschean. He's a
Oh
Nietzschean.
yeah,
I deeply disagree with whatever he says about either psychoanalysis or Hegel, but I very much enjoy reading him, and the intelligent anti-Hegelians are far more interesting than the dull Hegelians. And there's so much dull Hegelianism going around. Yeah. So I also enjoy reading Deleuze, who's the anti-Hegelian, but definitely a very clever one.
absolutely.
Um, so yes, and Karatani, yes, of course, Karatani as well. I mean, but this would then lead us further away from, I mean, the whole figure of Socrates and the question of equality and the gadfly of the community. Yes, I agree, of course, with this. But now, whereas there's no simple answer to this. Whereas the power of the dark side of logos, where does it come from, and why can it get the upper hand? Um, um, there is there's nothing with the rumors. I mean, there's the old adage that audacer calumniare semper aliquid heret. Uh, Spread rumors boldly, something will always stick. And there's this part of language where, I mean, even if you disprove all the particular accusations, rumors, whatever, and even if everybody believes that there's nothing really to them, it nevertheless sticks. It nevertheless defines the person about whom the rumors have been spread. It starts functioning as a characteristic of that person. I mean, the kind of thing that the rumor has qualified him with. And there is a property of language that you cannot erase this mark. You cannot erase this mark. Everybody can believe that it's not true, but nevertheless, it has been told, it has been preferred, it has been stuck on this person, and there's no way you can erase this mark. This is one thing, the irrational kind of part where language is not about reference and description. It's also about a mark that cannot be erased. It can leave a mark that cannot be erased. And I just give a small example of a book I read yesterday, actually. It's quite a good book. It's cool. I picked it up because of the title, because the title is The Rumor Game, and the author is somebody called Thomas Mullen, and it happens in 1943 in Boston, in the middle of Second World War. And it's quite interesting. Also, the description of what the America during the Second World War looked like is quite interesting. And there was a huge opposition to America entering the war, being in war in Europe. There was a massive anti-Semitism around, but nevertheless, and just one thing. One of the main characters of the book is a journalist who worked for this Boston Star newspaper and runs a column called The Rumor Clinic. The Rumor Clinic. So whatever rumors are going around, and this is a war, and there's a huge amount of rumors and paranoia and all kinds of things. Whatever rumors go around, she tries to disprove them, dismantle them, and show where they originated and why this is not true, why there is nothing to it. You know? So she has a sort of enlightenment mission to undo rumors by reasonable argument, by proofs. And then at some point, government agency comes to this newspaper and says, "Stop this rumor clinic, stop this column. We don't want anything of it." And they say, "Why?" He said, "Okay, you can disprove all these things, but basically you're still spreading rumors. I mean, what people will believe are the rumors, not your disproval. The rumors will stick. However much you try to disprove them, stop this column at once. you are only spreading rumors. So even dismantling the rumors is still spreading rumors. The rumors stick. There's something that sticks in rumors. So this is one part of this kind of irrational way that the signifier works. Irrational way the signifier works. That it leaves a mark. And this could, I mean, the reason that this sticks also is what I try to address at some points in the book in various ways, is that there is an economy of jouissance in this. There's
Yeah.
an economy of enjoyment. And rumor has this sort of schadenfreude enjoyment, because the big advantage one has with rumors is the easy power it gives you over other people.
Mhm.
You just spread these rumors, you don't subscribe to it. You said, this is not, I'm not saying this. It's just a rumor I heard. I'm just transmitting some rumor I heard. So you completely disentangle yourself from your enunciation. And what you're saying is basically, I am saying this and I'm not saying this. I'm
Hmm.
saying this, but I'm not saying this. So yeah, and this saying it and not saying it at the same time sort of leaves you this space of jouissance. I'm not saying this, but let me try this out. Let me spread this. I know there's nothing to it, but somebody might get in trouble. But I'm not responsible for this. Nobody takes responsibility for the rumors,
Yeah.
which in the end can have disastrous effects.
Yes. So this notion of the Lacanian big other is fundamentally a split construct. And I think that it's interesting because it would be, and you don't mention it too much, but I've studied Freud's conception of the superego
Mhm.
as itself also split between a kind of external sensorial force, but also like an inner mechanism.
Mhm.
And of course, all of that uh, infamously or importantly changes once Freud publishes Beyond the Pleasure Principle. He revises the theory of the superego. And as another reference, Etienne Balibar has a wonderful analysis of Freud's revision of the superego
Mhm.
concept. But you see my point. Nonetheless, there still is a two-ness of the superego, just as there is a two-ness
Mhm.
of the big other. But at the same time, Lacan says that this uh, sort of phrase, of course, that ultimately the big other does not exist. And you talk about in your genealogy of rumors from, and I want to actually turn in some sense to that moment of the Enlightenment period, and the figure that emerges here that is most interesting, of course, in my opinion, is Rousseau. And then we will get to the modern period, and then we'll talk about Lacan. But since we talked about Socrates, I think second would be Rousseau. I think there's many others we can speak about, but let's just focus on Rousseau if we might. I love it because Rousseau uh, becomes so paranoid and invents a type of conspiracy about his persecution by his colleagues, on the one hand, as well as by the public. Because when he publishes the social contract, well, I mean, the book is burned. There's a warrant for his arrest, and he flees to London with David Hume, and they have a huge falling out. Rousseau then flees back to Europe, and you show that Diderot, Voltaire, they all really thought on a personal level that Rousseau was a kind of an inconsistent figure. But still, nonetheless, Rousseau becomes the muse of the French Revolution and the Jacobins, and he opens up. He is the philosopher of radical liberalism, for good and bad. Um, could you say something about his? Because I think he's paradigmatic. Yeah. We talked about Socrates. Let's talk about Rousseau. Tell us maybe fill in a little more if you don't mind.
Well, There is the moment of the Enlightenment. This is I deal with different moments. I give different examples of different historic moments and how the question of rumors function. This whole section devoted also to Shakespearean use of rumors, which is complex and interesting. But then, the big moment I'm interested in is the moment of the Enlightenment, which is a sort of, let's say, almost 2,000 years later, the reenactment of the Greek Enlightenment, of the Greek establishment of logos, that is a big other, which would be based on Enlightenment reason alone, and could thus act against the prejudices, the old order, the myth, the rumors, and all those things. And I take two figures in this Enlightenment, and one figure is Beaumarchais and the Figaro. I take Figaro because he's the figure of the canny servant who takes the upper hand of the master based on his abilities of overturning the old order, and in particularly being victorious against the power of rumors. Because in Beaumarchais and then in Rossini's opera, The Barber of Seville, you have this famous eulogy, anthem of calumny. I mean, it's one of the most famous arias in this opera. It's based on Beaumarchais. It's this eulogy of calumny and its powers. But in the plot of the play, Figaro actually gets victorious over the forces of the Ancien regime and over the forces of rumor. So so much praised power of calumny, indomitable power of calumny, actually is in the end defeated. So this is the optimistic side of the Enlightenment. Figaro can win when Socrates couldn't. This could be a sort of okay. A bit makeshift. But you have the other side of the Enlightenment, which is Rousseau, and Rousseau as one could say the origin of conspiracy theories. I mean, he has a huge conspiracy theory in mind. He sees himself as constantly persecuted by the powers of the old regime which burned his books, but also persecuted by his peers. I mean, he was part, nevertheless, of the whole generation of encyclopedia and led by Diderot. He was close to Diderot at some point, but then they had a falling out. He had falling out with many people. Hume, as you mentioned, Voltaire despised Rousseau at all times. And so he had this huge idea that he was a persecuted victim of a cosmic conspiracy, where both the Enlightenment people, les messieurs, and the powers of the old regime actually worked hand in hand in this huge conspiracy against him. And I look into this text, the text where he tries to defend himself, and one of these texts is not so well known, but I think it's a terrific text. Rousseau, Juge de Jean-Jacques, Rousseau, Judge of Jean-Jacques, where he sets up a sort of imaginary court where his case is presented in this court kind of situation, and even the person who was not, who was very much opposed in the beginning to Rousseau, etc., is convinced in the end. So the court actually, this imaginary court, acquits him, but this has no consequences. This has no consequences, and so he doesn't know to whom to appeal. And in the most incredible development that I describe in the book, he decided to put his case to God himself, and to deposit this manuscript of his defense on the altar of Notre Dame at the heart of Paris, and then God will decide. The divine authority will decide about his case. But even though he studied closely how he would do this, on this particular day there was a gate which was closed, and he couldn't deposit his manuscript. He couldn't present his case to God, and so he somehow came to the idea that God himself is part of the conspiracy. It's not just the Enlightenment people, the Ancien regime, but actually God himself was somehow part of this general plot against him. It's amazing. It's amazing as a story. It's absolutely amazing. And you can see that there's one important thing, that this conspiracy that Rousseau saw himself as the victim of, it was no figment of imagination. I mean, he was seriously persecuted, and his fellow Enlightenment intellectuals actually did hate him or did nothing to help him. Not really. So was it a delusion or not? And here's the problem with conspiracy theories. I think that every conspiracy theory is wrong. Every conspiracy theory is wrong, even if it can be supported by some argument, even if it can be supported by some facts or constellations, even if some parts of it seem to be true. And you have this adage by Lacan that jealousy is a pathological state. Even though it may be true that your wife is cheating on you, it's still a pathological state. I mean, so it's the question of pathology pertains to the position of enunciation, and there is this pathological point in Rousseau.
Incredible. It's very interesting to me because I've been studying. I mean, first, as a little reference, if I could, just to keep with my pattern here, is Leo Strauss has a book called Persecution in the Art of Writing.
Yeah.
And he actually tries to put forward a sort of optimistic view that philosophers really have never been able to escape this sense of persecution. Whether it be the state, their own peers, and sort of a paranoid reading. And I think it's interesting because I think that Strauss himself was a product of Cold War paranoia. But you see, embedded in his argument is actually something that, well, even if you are persecuted, your persecution can be sort of sublimated as creativity, which I think is an interesting idea because, I've also been studying what Marx thinks about censorship. And you may or may not know, but Marx was a journalist after he couldn't get a job, after he published, or after his dissertation. And within 1 year, the Rheinische Zeitung was shut down because of censorship. So Marx actually becomes a strong critic of censorship. And Rousseau's position on censorship was that he was in favor of it, which is a bit contradictory based on what you just said. And who else was in favor of censorship was Kant. Because in What is Enlightenment, Kant says, yes, well, the liberal public sphere needs to make a kind of agreement with what he calls the rational despot. And if the rational despot censors the intelligentsia, the philosophers, well, we can still survive. Universalizability of reason can still persist. So, and then you say that Kafka becomes a figure in the modern period where the two sides of the big other become amalgamated. And I want to invite you to reflect and meditate a bit on the figure of Kafka, because I think that he is a pivotal, like Rousseau. I see him as very pivotal in this mutation. Something mutates in the authority complex. Because really, when we talk about the big other, are we not talking about this sort of concept that refers to a type of psychic authority, which also has a foothold in the material sociality as well? So you've talked about Rousseau. Can we now introduce Kafka to the picture, perhaps? And then I have another idea, but perhaps you could do that for us.
Well, it's Kafka. The shortest and the most striking way to speak about Kafka and rumors is just to look at the first sentence of the trial. And this sentence, well, in German writes, Jemand musste Josef K. verleumdet haben. Somebody must have been spreading rumors against Joseph K. So this is how it all. So without him doing anything wrong, he was one morning apprehended. So somebody must have been spreading rumors against Joseph K. So everything starts with a rumor. Everything starts with a rumor. And what is amazing in this, but first, if you look at the structure of the sentence, somebody must have been spreading rumors against Joseph K. The sentence doesn't even say that the rumors were actually spread. So there must have been rumors. One could paraphrase this sentence like, there is a rumor that there have been rumors spread against Joseph K. So it's a kind of, it all starts, the whole thing starts with a sort of meta rumor, actually. So in the beginning, there is not a word. It's not like in St. John's Gospel. In the beginning, there's a rumor. It's a wrong kind of word, not the word which will be the bearer of truth, but precisely the other side, the shadowy side of logos. It's not. In Greek, the first sentence of John's Gospel is logos. In the beginning, there was a word, and this is precisely the flip side of logos. There is a rumor that starts it all. And the interesting thing, there's several interesting things, but it's a very simple first sentence. The first is this rumor is mentioned only in the first sentence, and the novel never comes back to it. And only the first sentence is written from a sort of narrator's bird's eye point of view. The rest of the novel is written from the perspective of Joseph K. So only the first sentence, it's the narrator who throws the first stone, as it were, and then everything starts unfolding. And the second interesting thing is that we never learn what the rumors were. We never learn what the rumors were. With Socrates, he knew what the rumors were. He was corrupting the youth, undoing the order, the deities of the city, undermining the deities of the city, the authorities, etc. So we know what the accusations against him were. With Joseph K., we never learn what he was charged with, what he was accused of. There's basically no trial. It's a misnomer. The title of the novel is a misnomer because he never has the occasion of presenting his apology in front of a court, as opposed to Socrates. And so we never know that this is just a rumor as such. It's just the fact that the rumor existed is enough for the whole machine to get started. And then the court is supposed to be the agent of the picada. The agent of law, the agent that should adjudicate, that should make a judgment in a chaotic oppositions, the diverse conflicts of the civil society. There has to be a picada who decides this, who has the power, the authority of decision, of judgment. But here you can see that the court has been taken hostage of the rumors. It's actually the extension of the rumor. It's not the logos which intervenes. It's actually the whole court thing, and the court is everywhere, nowhere. It's omnipresent. It has no boundaries. You don't know where the court is. You are inside the court, as it were, all the time. There is no outside of the court, and the court has been taken hostage of the rumors. So this is the construction that Kafka makes, and I think it's very important that rumors are only mentioned in the first sentence, but nevertheless everything starts with the rumors and everything unfolds from the point of rumors, from this
incredible
flip side of the word of logos.
So I'm trying to make a sort of general chronology here. So if we move to the post-war period, towards the end of your text, you sort of incorporate a bit of your own anecdotal experience in a socialist regime, which was censorial. And you make an interesting distinction between gossip and rumors. And help us tease this out, because on the one hand, gossip, you say, is kind of a tonic to rumors, or it could be thought of as like the means to unravel the power of the dark side, maybe. And you show that in repressive regimes, gossip is essential as a weapon to the state censorship or the state control of rumors, because you could understand modern bureaucracy as masters of the dissemination of rumors as thought control and rumors as political instrument. They instrumentalize rumors. So talk about the way that gossip as a positive concept. That itself is very funny. Tell us more about that distinction that you introduced at the end there of the book.
Yes, well, I start with rumors as a rather unitary, massive concept. But then at some point I realized that distinctions have to be made. And there was quite some work, actually, some good literature on this. And that gossip is the other side of rumors. I mean, with gossip, we mostly know who the originators are, or we gossip in a certain group where we don't need to abide by public standards of proof or justification, but we try things out among friends and evaluate other people, evaluate various rumors, gossip, whatever we heard. And this is a sort of very basic fabric of society is formed by gossip. It's very basic networking. And I like this. I mentioned this book by Robin Dunbar. It's actually a very funny book. I recommend it. And, nice to read. I mean, which is called "Grooming, Gossip, and the Origin of Language." And his idea is that in monkey societies you have grooming, which is sort of hands-on networking and social hierarchies, etc. Reputation management is based on this. And his basic idea is that language is grooming at a distance and hands off. We stop grooming and we just have language which has a wider spread, and we have language in order to gossip, in order to do this basic to do more efficiently the basic function that the grooming has in monkey societies, which is reputation management, manage our standing and manage our ties to other people. But here's also where the problematic side of gossip, there's a necessary side of it, there's always a problematic side to gossip, which is that one only can gossip about the absent. This is with both rumors and gossip. You gossip about the absent. You can't gossip about the present. Which means that gossip is always based on the division into an in-group and out-group. It's our ties of the in-group which are made through gossip and maintained, but there is the out-group against whom we are the in-group. So there's always this edge of alternating hostility to the other, who are the people who are excluded, who are structurally excluded by gossip. So it's not like simply gossip is a good thing, but it has the edge of always has the edge of exclusion, a certain edge of aggression against those who are excluded. There's always this sting in the gossip. If we try to make a good in praise of gossip as opposed to rumors, one has to keep this in mind. But there's another thing with gossip. It's not only that it caters for very basic social networking, and there would be no society without gossip if we only had to speak based on epistemological knowledge and verifiability and proof and justification. We wouldn't be able to speak. Maybe we have our social ties depend very much on this informal and non-universalizable part of speech. Because logos has to be universalizable. It has to be the bearer of the universal. Whereas gossip and rumors, what they have in common, although they're different, is that they're non-universalizable. And so we have to depend on this. And the good side of gossip is, I also point this out at some point in the book, is that it can be the resource of the underdog. The resource of the underdog, that people who are deprived of access to the public sphere actually use gossip as a weapon, as a political weapon, as something that holds together their societies. And one can see this, massively historically with women, because there was this patriarchal prejudice that men talk properly while women gossip. But of course, it's nonsense. I mean, men gossip just as much as women do, I suppose, but it's structurally different because women had historically no access to the public sphere, and gossip was their weapon. Gossip was something extremely important for the community to counteract the patriarchal society. And you have the same with the racial other. You have the gossip in black communities. Quite a lot of research has been done in this. You have gossip in queer communities, besides the people who didn't have access to the official public space of argument. They could use gossip as an establishment of community. And you mentioned, I mentioned briefly, the socialist experience. Yugoslavia is not as bad as other socialist countries, but nevertheless, you had official news, which everybody knew that can't be quite trusted. So we had to depend on rumors and gossip in order to survive, in order to know where you will get certain goods, because there was constant goods shortages, or in order to figure out by gossip what might be the shifts in power structures, what is it that power is never telling us. We somehow had to learn through the grapevine, through the gossip, through the informal channels. Whole populations depending on somehow hermeneutically receiving the official news and the gossip and rumors which are spreading. So,
wow.
yes, this was also a source of survival and empowerment in some sense. I mean, gossip can be a source of empowerment.
Could you, as an encore question, and then we will break for now, this has been fabulous, explain Kierkegaard's I think, very funny attempt at a solution. It's actually quite ingenious what he comes up with to combat the way that rumors stick onto a thinker, onto the philosopher. But you show that ultimately, and I'll invite you to say what he thinks up, you say ultimately it doesn't really work for Kierkegaard, in fact, and that but it is still you see, because I think what I love about your book here is you're sort of giving us a way to reread the history of philosophy, because every philosopher
through a very peculiar spyglass, a side angle, as it were.
Absolutely. But it is, I mean, in the case of Kierkegaard, Socrates, Rousseau, I mean, this is not marginal to their thought. It's not some kind of minor phenomenon. No, it's just deeply shifts the way that their whole orientation progresses. But maybe, as a final question, can you explain Kierkegaard's very interesting, proposition for how to deal with rumors?
Well, I use a lot of literature, literary examples. And as some authors who wrote about this pointed out, that novelists were far more sensitive to the way that rumors and gossip work. And philosophers were mostly dismissive. They didn't see this as a topic worthy of proper philosophical consideration. And when they speak about rumors, they speak dismissively and with a sort of moral condemnation. And they don't speak very often about this. And in general, I mean, Rousseau is a big exception to the pun. I take up just two philosophers. I mean, I suppose we'll leave out Heidegger. I mean, Heidegger is interesting because he's actually the only philosopher who has a proper theory of idle talk. Das Gerede, what he names Das Gerede, and what he names das Mann, they. No, it's idle a structural talk. For him. Yeah, idle talk is for him a structural necessity. It's a structural necessity on the backdrop of which one should construct the authentic speech. No? So it's not simply bad. It's necessary. It is a way that being shows. Okay, let's not go there. But with Kierkegaard, is very funny because it's he was another philosopher who was like Rousseau, victim of a vicious rumor campaign. A vicious rumor campaign, which he had it coming. I mean, he called it upon himself because he was praised by the Danish, very popular review at the time, the journal The Corsair. And he said, "This is such a shame to be praised by Corsair. I would much rather they would vituperate me or blemish me or whatever." And so he had it coming. I mean, they really then did what he asked them to do, which is to launch a whole vicious rumor campaign and character assassination, as it were. But he instigated this. But when this happened, and this is interesting because this is not like rumors by unknown sources. The origins of rumors are usually not known, but here it was known who the origins were, and it was systematic, and he asked for it for this thing. But once this happened, I mean, he was absolutely framed that he couldn't counteract it. The master of irony suddenly lost any sense of irony. I mean, and his life changed. His life actually turned into a nightmare through this affair. And people who have looked into Kierkegaard's biography, I mean, this actually did mean a major break in his life, and the entry into his later serious theological period. But the ingenious proposal that he came up with, and he referred to, maybe I should read it because I couldn't recount it very well. He says basically, if you could suppose for a moment that there was a law which didn't forbid people talking, but simply ordered that everything that was spoken about should be treated as though it had happened 50 years ago, then the gossips would be done for. They would be in despair. On the other hand, it would not really interfere with anyone who could really talk. So what would be the law against gossip? Treat everything as if it happened 50 years ago.
I love it. I actually think it's really...
This is wonderful Kierkegaard. I think there's some things that only a certain philosopher could say. This is the kind of thing that only Kierkegaard could say.
It would be like a solution for the internet, the social media problem.
The social media, speak only about what happened 50 years ago when the internet didn't exist yet.
Well, obviously there's more to discuss about this wonderful book, but I think we've touched on quite a lot of good things, and I want to thank you for joining me on the podcast, and I want to encourage everyone to look into your work, especially this book, and hopefully we might have you back on to discuss other topics in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.